For the next one, I would like to introduce you to a guy with a big challenge. He's going to answer a big question here. Because we've been talking a lot about plans, but now we're going to talk about a little bit how we turn those plans into reality. Has anyone tried making plans that didn't pan out? Have you tried in your companies, perhaps some of these 5-year plans? How effective is that? And it took a lot of time to make them, right? And we cared very much while we were drawing them up. But increasingly, we're moving more and more to a time where one thing is making the plans, but another thing is actually carrying it out, especially as the world changes faster and faster. Erik Morthorst, who I'm going to come up now and talk to us, is a professor at DTU, the Danish Technical University. And he's going to talk to us about Denmark's green future, and certainly for one, I think that's quite an important thing, being that that's where I live. And he's going to talk about how is that not just a plan, how does that turn into reality? Erik, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here today. I'll start by taking you a little bit to Paris, actually. So, as you know, I suppose you've all heard about the COP21 in Paris, where a huge number of countries, more than 180 countries, they were looking at each other and said, how do we actually reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases? And as you probably know as well from the media, it was turned out to be quite successful. And plenty of people said, oh, this is so positive. We have never seen that much effort going in the right direction before. And of course, it was positive. If we just look a little bit at the picture up here, you know we have to come down to at least the 2-degree target, or hopefully below the 2-degree target, following the blue line out here to the right. And actually it says where we are today and what level of emissions we should reduce until. So reaching the 2% target, 2-degree target in 2050, it is very, very important for us. But let's have a little close-up of this one. Because now we have some milestones on the way, and one of them is in 2030. And if we look at what these countries in Paris, they promised each other, then actually we see that there is a gap in 2030 from the business as usual, as you see on the upper right part, to the blue range at the lower part. And in total there's 24 gigaton of CO2 we have to reduce before 2030. Not in Sweden, not in Denmark, but on the global level. And what they promised each other was actually to reduce 12 of these 24 gigaton. So, of course, this is a very nice starting point. I believe some of us can get our hands down, but nevertheless, it is just a starting point. We are just at the beginning of a long way towards sustainability. And it will not end in many years ahead of us. So this is nice, yes, but again, we need much more. We need much more to do than what we have started here. Although, as mentioned, this is a very nice starting point. And I'll just give you an example from Denmark. Denmark is a very small country, but nevertheless, it is an example on how we can go in that direction in certainly some ways that will make it worthwhile doing the efforts. So, and just to remind you, why this is actually so important. Again, this is the latest news. The red one is showing the average temperature on the globe. It's rising, rising and rising. And if you take up to the right corner, you see the temperature for March 2016. And it's the warmest March we've ever had. And it goes on in that direction. So yes, it's good we have the COP21. It's good we're going in the right direction, but more need to be done. We certainly have some very, very strong challenges ahead of us. So let's see what we are doing in Denmark. Actually 5 years ago, now it was mentioned, we have to go from plans to reality. But nevertheless, of course, we start with the plans. So 5 years ago, I was member of this commission in Denmark on climate change policy. And we came actually out with a report saying that we should try to be independent of fossil fuels by 2050. And actually, the message was nice, and industry believed in it, and the government believed in it. So actually, the former government in Denmark turned this into policy. So they have a vision that in 2050 we should use no more fossil fuels. And as you can see on the small graph up there, the lower one is actually oil, and then we have natural gas and coal, and the green one, it's the right one. Yes, renewable energy is still gradually increasing. Now, not so fast, but nevertheless, it is increasing. So let's see what we have to do. Actually, we have to go from fossil fuels, which actually accounts for 75% at the time being. And I believe that's the case in many countries, not only in Denmark, but in most countries actually, I believe that renewables will have a lesser share than the 25% that we have in Denmark. And then we have to go, as shown on the right, to wind, biomass, solar, heat pumps, and so on. So we get rid of the fossil fuels. And we have to go gradually, just phasing out the fossil fuels and end in 2050 in a totally green society. And what will happen in 2050 is that we will have an energy system that is much more dominated by electricity than we see today. So no oil, no coal, but plenty of electricity. And wind power will have a very large role to play in Denmark. But at the same time, we see that solar is developing tremendously fast. So actually we have seen for 10 years now that solar has what we call a learning rate of 21%, and it means that the price decreases 21% each time the capacity on the globe is doubled. And at the time being, with very strong growth rates for solar power, it means that prices simply goes way down in a very, very fast way. So solar power might have a much larger role to play in the future than we actually have just expected a few years ago. Then, of course, biomass. We just heard about biomass, and biomass is sustainable in Sweden. Yes, but certainly it's not sustainable all over the globe. I can assure you that. And biomass is a limited resource. So we have simply to use it where it's most valuable for us. So it means that it should supplement what we have of wind and power, but it should not be the main fuel. And finally, as mentioned before, now we have transport. You know, today most of the transport, of course, is running on fossil fuels. And what do we have to do in the future? Electric cars, yes, but it takes time, batteries and so on. We might have hydrogen, yeah, but it's pretty expensive to produce. We might have bioethanol based on biomass, but again, it's quite expensive. So we need some solutions for transport. It is somehow our Achilles heel. So let's just have a look at what we have been doing in Denmark to move from plans and to reality. And if we look into wind power, we actually have managed to have 42% of our power consumption. It is actually last year supplied by wind power in Denmark. And I believe that is close to be a world record. If you just go back 10, 15 years ago, everybody said, you cannot have more than 10%, at most 15% in your electricity supply of wind power. Then it will simply not do, it will not work. But nevertheless, we have proved that we have almost 50% now, and we're going for the 50% by 2020. So it's on the right track. If you look at the map down to the right, then you can see how we develop with offshore wind farms and on-land wind farms. Actually, we have a very interesting one. Kriegers Flak, shown over there. It is actually a collaboration between Denmark, Germany, and Sweden. And it looks very nice because not only being an offshore wind farm producing power, but it could also be interconnected, sending power between the countries. Unfortunately, the Swedish government decided that it was too expensive, so Sweden withdrew. But now the plan is actually being fulfilled by Denmark and Germany. And that's just one case. We have plenty of offshore at the west coast, so we believe it certainly is on the right track. But of course, it's not without problems. You know, wind is blowing when the wind is there, and solar is shining when the sun is there, and so on. So there will be times where there will be no power. And what to do? Well, at the time being, we are making interconnectors, cables to the neighboring countries, so we could help each other. But in the long term, we might need some kind of a storage facility. And now it gets complicated. You do not need to understand this one. Just to show you that in the long term, we cannot only do by wind and solar on their own. They have to go into a system where they interact. So at the bottom we have gas, in between we have all different kind of fuels for transport, and at the upper level we have the electricity infrastructure. And of course, all these should interact, hydrogen, biogas, and so on, and making it possible to store part of it in the gas storages, as you see in the middle. And then we can convert it to transport fuels, seen over there. Because we need to handle transport. It's one of the most important things to do. But all this, of course, it requires that there will be some investors. And again, we come back to some plans. We need some very firm commitments by the governments to say, where are we going in the future? We need some long-term targets, we need some milestones, so investors know how they can handle their investments in the future. So they have a kind of certainty before they invest. And that's really where we are now, that governments should go forward and say, this is the direction we want to go. It is possible, it is realistic, it's not too expensive, we can do it actually. So I believe that in the long run we can actually get a system where we have only renewables and being independent of fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul Erik. Okay, good bit of optimism here late in the day. We have time for a question if anyone would like to ask Paul Erik a question. It doesn't have to be in Danish. We have one here.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering if there is, potentials in, if you can talk something about potentials in other countries to do similar things. And, if there is something unique about Denmark that makes it easier compared to, maybe not Sweden, but maybe, China or the US or, bigger issues, so to speak.
Of course, it depends very much where we are on the globe, because somewhere we have big potentials for wind power. Just take the mid-US, they have plenty of potentials for wind power. And if you take the northwestern part of Europe, there's huge potential for wind power. But going to Eastern Europe, no, that's perhaps not the way we should go. But for instance, China, again, there's plenty of potentials. But I believe that if you take solar and wind power, they will supplement each other in most countries. Going to Southern Europe, of course, you have a huge potential for solar power. So I believe that in most countries, utilizing these two sources, you can get quite far actually.
Thanks. But that is about the sources, but there must be on the policy side as well, because you said that was key. Can you say something about that as well?
Yes. Actually, we have a target in Europe of 27% by 2030. We already have a target of 20% renewable in 2020, and it will be fulfilled actually for most countries in Europe. The target of the 27% is not distributed on countries. And I believe it could be very, very important that each country have a commitment. So I hope that it will come in place in the future, because actually we're doing very well on renewables in Europe. If you look at the US, they're actually so far, so quite a number of these technologies they can do on their own without subsidies. And of course that's the way we need them to go. At the end, they could pick up on their own and not being depending on subsidies. And that is the case in most countries by now. But hopefully we will try to get out of that phase before so long. So.
Cool.
Hello and thank you. I lived in Australia for 7 years and being part of the discussion around wind farms over there in very negative style, even ministers talking about how ugly they are. That's the kind of argument sometimes. How has it been in Denmark, and do you see any big challenges with wind farm as a big source of energy?
There will always be a resistance. And of course we see that in Denmark as well. But it is a minority. But of course there is a reason why we are moving wind farms offshore, because there you have no problems. It gets more expensive, but okay, if society is prepared to pay, then of course we're doing it. But nevertheless, I believe that 85% of all Danish people, they are certainly for this development up here. And as mentioned, when we first launched this plan for being independent of fossil fuels, we thought that, let's see what happens. Perhaps we can get some of it anyhow. But it showed up that industry, they were very, very willing to go this way. And we have a very strong, growing green industry in Denmark. And the government we have by now, it's a right-wing government. They are a little reluctant if we should go in this direction. But actually now industry are pushing them in the right direction. So I think that's actually, it shows that we are on the right track.
So industry is a big part of it, you mean? So that's
Yes.
one of the leverage points.
It is. Industry is a big part, yes. And of course it takes time. But you know, when first industry is gradually shifting to this direction, then it's hopefully difficult to get them out of that track again. So yes.
Absolutely. And then we have time for one last question from you here.
Hi. I basically come from India, and Denmark and Sweden are most developed countries in terms of technology and those type of things. And you have an agenda of UN reaching less than -2% of in the temperature. What about those type of countries which are really moving towards the economical growth and still based on coal as a fuel? And is there any collaboration to share the technology with those countries to come up with the solutions?
Yes. Actually, at my institute at the university, we have the UNEP Center, United Nations Collaborating Center on Energy and Environment. And we are certainly very much trying to engage people in the third country, especially in technology transfer. So it's certainly part of it. And of course, this is a very, very important part. I've given you an example for Denmark. Denmark is a small country. We, of course, need to get it growing somewhere else. And I believe there are efforts going in that direction as well. But no doubt, more could be done. So,
Thank
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you very much, Paul Erik. So, the next thing we're going to have now is a small break. There was 3 speakers in the program, as you'll know, but Pier's not coming, so that means we're a little bit ahead to the coffee, which I think, we don't mind here on the second day of the conference. So after the conferences, after the coffee, as you can see in your program, there's a couple of different things. So the most of you will probably stay here for the master classes, but there's also a couple of places available in the other ones. So if anyone would like to join the round table or the master class, then turn up. There are some rooms here and there. You can see in the program where they are. And once you go out to those, then we would like you to be back here at 4, because here in Scandinavia we don't only run conferences on time, we run them early. So we'll finish the break at 35 past, so not 1:45, but 35 past, so 10 minutes early. And then we will be here already at 4 o'clock, so we can just finish the day together. So for the coffee break, yesterday there was a little bit of a laugh that we'd been talking about diabetes all day, and then we served brownies and chocolate cakes for dinner, for lunch. But today we've been talking about energy, and I happen to know that there's a lot of energy in chocolate cake. So that's what you'll be having now. Enjoy it.